They told me my husband left me nothing. For 32 years, I stood by Robert Hayes through everything, through his failed business ventures and his small victories, through his dark moods that could fill a room like smoke, through late mortgage payments and arguments about money that left us both exhausted and resentful, through his mother's funeral, where he didn't shed a single tear but held my hand so tight I thought my bones might break, through his son's rebellion and 1,000 small compromises that make up a marriage. I held his hand through 6 rounds of chemotherapy. I slept in a chair beside his hospital bed for 3 weeks when the infection nearly killed him. 3 weeks of listening to machines beep and nurses whisper and watching his chest rise and fall in shallow, painful breaths. I was there when he took his last breath on a Tuesday morning in March, the sun streaming through the hospital window like some cruel joke, whispering that I loved him, that it was okay to let go, that I'd be fine. I wasn't fine. 2 weeks after we buried him in the cemetery on MLK Drive, 2 weeks of sympathy cards and covered dishes and people telling me he was in a better place now. His son Trevor sat me down in my own kitchen and told me my husband had left me nothing. No savings account in my name, no life insurance policy with me as beneficiary, no secret nest egg tucked away for the widow. Nothing. I didn't believe it at first. How could I? You don't spend 32 years building a life with someone, sacrificing your career and your dreams and your body to care for them through terminal cancer, just to be left destitute. You don't watch your wife give up everything and then leave her with nothing. But Trevor showed me the bank statements, the bills, the debts. His face was expressionless, his voice flat, like he was reading off a grocery list instead of dismantling my entire life. Robert had spent everything on his medical care. The experimental treatments insurance wouldn't cover, the private nurses when I couldn't be there, the pain medications that cost more than our mortgage. We were broke. Worse than broke, we were in debt. Then, 3 days later, the lawyer called. There was a life insurance policy. $2 million. My heart leaped. For one brief, shining moment, I thought maybe Robert had planned ahead after all. Maybe he'd made sure I'd be taken care of. Maybe Trevor had been wrong. Or maybe Robert had kept this one thing secret. One final gift to the wife who'd stood by him until the bitter end. Then the lawyer said the words that shattered my entire world. Mrs. Hayes, I need to inform you that the beneficiary listed on this policy is not you. It's a Miss Alicia Morgan. According to our records, she was your late husband's executive assistant, his secretary, his 28-year-old secretary. $2 million. To her. And I got nothing. My name is Margaret Louise Hayes, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 62 years old, though some days I feel 80, and other days I feel like that foolish 17-year-old girl I used to be, making mistakes I'd spend decades trying to forget. Let me tell you about Robert, because you need to understand who he was to understand why what he did hurt so much, and why, in the end, it turned out to be the greatest gift he could have given me. I met Robert Hayes when I was 30 years old, 30 and determined never to need a man again. I'd been divorced for 10 years by then. My first marriage happened when I was 19. A boy from church named Marcus, who promised me forever and delivered exactly 6 months before he decided forever was too long and too boring and not nearly exciting enough. I won't waste time on him. He's not part of this story except to say that after him, I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. I got a job as an office manager at a marketing firm in downtown Atlanta. Started at the bottom, worked my way up. It was good work, steady pay, health insurance, a 401k I contributed to religiously. I was good at my job. I could manage people without making them hate me, handle budgets down to the penny, solve problems that made my boss's head spin. I built a life I could be proud of, a life that didn't need a man to validate it or complete it or give it meaning. Then Robert walked into our office on a humid Tuesday in July, and everything changed. He was a client, looking to advertise his small construction company. Needed help getting his name out there, building a brand, whatever that meant. He was 43 years old, 13 years older than me. Handsome in that weathered way some men get when they work with their hands for a living. Silver streaking his temples, deep lines around his eyes from squinting in the sun, calluses on his palms when he shook my hand. He'd been widowed 5 years earlier. His wife Karen had died of breast cancer at 39, leaving him with a teenage son named Trevor, who was angry at the world and everyone in it. We dated for 2 years before we married. It wasn't the wild, reckless passion of my first marriage, the kind that burns hot and fast and leaves nothing but ashes and regret. This was different, comfortable, steady, safe. We'd have dinner on Friday nights, nothing fancy, just whatever restaurant had a special. We'd watch movies on his couch while Trevor glared at me from across the room. We'd talk about our days, our dreams, our fears. He proposed on a Sunday morning in his kitchen. No ring yet, just the question. "Maggie, I think we should get married. What do you think?" What did I think? I thought he was practical and stable and would never leave me for someone younger and prettier. I thought I was 32 and tired of being alone. I thought maybe comfortable was better than passionate. Maybe steady was better than exciting. "Yes," I said. "I think we should." We got married at the courthouse 3 months later. Small ceremony, just his son and my sister Beverly. Trevor didn't smile in any of the photos. Robert's construction business had its ups and downs, some years feast, some years famine. We lived in a modest house in southwest Atlanta, 3 bedrooms and a yard that Robert kept threatening to landscape, but never did. We drove used cars. Mine was a 1998 Honda Civic that rattled when I went over 40. His was a pickup truck for work. We took one vacation every 3 years if we were lucky, usually somewhere cheap like Savannah or Charleston where we could drive instead of fly. We argued about money the way all couples do, how much to spend on Christmas gifts for Trevor, whether we could afford to replace the water heater that was making concerning noises, why he'd bought a new table saw when we were 2 months behind on the electric bill. But we made it work. We built a life together, brick by brick, year by year, compromise by compromise. Trevor never warmed to me. I understood. I wasn't his mother, never tried to be, never wanted to replace the woman he'd lost when he was 14. But there was always this coldness between us, this wall I couldn't climb no matter how hard I tried. I tried to talk to him about school, about his interests, about anything, and he'd give me one-word answers and then disappear to his room. He was polite when he had to be, distant, dutiful. He came for Christmas and Thanksgiving after he moved out, brought his wife Jessica once they married, brought his baby son Marcus a few years later. He'd say the right things. "Thanks for dinner, Maggie. The house looks nice. We should do this more often," and then leave as soon as he reasonably could. Robert said Trevor just needed time, that he'd come around eventually, that I just had to be patient. He never did come around. Then, 5 years ago, everything changed. Robert got sick. It started with back pain. Nothing dramatic, just this dull ache that wouldn't go away. He thought he'd pulled something on a job site, 58 years old and still trying to work like he was 30. He took ibuprofen, used a heating pad, complained about getting old, but the pain got worse instead of better, spreading from his back to his abdomen, sharp and insistent. Then he started losing weight, 10 pounds in a month, then 20. His clothes hung off him. His face got gaunt. His skin took on this grayish tone that scared me every time I looked at him. I made him go to the doctor. He fought me on it. Men always do. But I insisted. Made the appointment myself, drove him there, sat in the waiting room reading 6-month-old magazines while they ran tests. The diagnosis came on a Friday in October. I remember because we were supposed to go to dinner that night, our standing Friday date night. Instead, we sat in Dr. Morrison's office and heard the words that would change everything. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. Dr. Morrison was kind but direct. With aggressive treatment, surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, we're looking at maybe 2 years, possibly 3 if you respond well to the treatment. 2 years, maybe 3. Robert was 58 years old. We'd been married 27 years. And suddenly I was staring down a future where I'd be a widow before I turned 60. We fought that cancer with everything we had. Surgery first, in December. They removed the tumor and part of his pancreas and some of his small intestine. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I slept in the chair beside his bed every single night, my back screaming in protest, my neck stiff and aching. The nurses tried to make me go home, said I needed rest, but I couldn't leave him. What if something happened? What if he woke up scared and alone? Then chemotherapy, 6 rounds, spread over 6 months. Each one was worse than the last. The first round, he was just tired. By the 3rd round, he couldn't keep anything down. By the 5th round, he was so weak he couldn't get out of bed without help. I learned things I never wanted to learn, how to give injections, how to change IV bags, how to manage a complex medication schedule. This pill at 8 a.m., that one at noon, this other one every 6 hours with food, even though food made him nauseous. How to clean up vomit and diarrhea and blood without flinching. How to hold someone while they cried from pain and fear and the humiliation of needing help to use the bathroom. I took a leave of absence from work at first, 12 weeks of FMLA, unpaid, but at least my job would be there when I came back. Except 12 weeks turned into 20, and my boss called to say they'd had to hire someone else. They were sorry. They understood. But they couldn't hold the position any longer. So I quit. Or rather, I was let go. Same thing, really. Someone had to take care of Robert and his insurance. What little he had didn't cover home health aides more than a few hours a week. So I became his nurse, his cook, his caretaker, his everything. The business had to close. Robert couldn't work, couldn't manage the crews, couldn't handle the stress of bidding on jobs and dealing with clients and making sure materials arrived on time. We sold off the equipment, the truck, the tools, the machinery, paid what debts we could, watched 30 years of work evaporate like morning mist. Our savings went next, then our retirement accounts, 20 years of contributions, gone in 18 months. Then we started borrowing against the house, taking out a home equity line of credit to pay for the treatments insurance wouldn't cover. Trevor came around more during those years. I'll give him that. He visited maybe once a month, sometimes twice. He'd sit with his father, talk about sports and the weather and his son's latest achievements. He'd ask how Robert was feeling, nod seriously while Robert lied and said he was doing fine, just a little tired. But Trevor never asked how I was holding up, never offered to help with the medical bills or the mortgage payments or the endless, crushing weight of watching someone die slowly, never offered to take a shift, to give me a break, to let me sleep for more than 3 hours at a time. He just came, visited his father and left, back to his own life, his own family, his own problems. Robert lasted 4 years, longer than anyone expected, including Dr. Morrison. The doctor said it was remarkable, that his will to live must be extraordinary, that he must have something to hold on for. I knew the truth. He wasn't holding on for something. He was just too stubborn to die on anyone's schedule but his own. When he finally passed, on that Tuesday morning in March, with me holding his hand and sunlight streaming through the hospital window, I felt a wave of emotion so complex I couldn't name it all. Relief that his suffering was over, grief that he was gone, exhaustion so deep it felt like I might never be truly rested again. And underneath it all, buried but still there, a tiny shameful flicker of relief for myself. Relief that I could finally rest. Relief that the marathon was over. I'd run myself into the ground caring for him, and now I could finally stop running. Except I couldn't stop, because 2 weeks later, I found out that all that sacrifice, all those years of caregiving, all that love and devotion and back-breaking work, it had earned me exactly nothing. Robert had left me nothing, and worse than nothing, he'd left everything to someone else. The funeral was small, intimate, some people might call it, though that makes it sound intentional rather than just sad. Robert had outlived most of his friends. The cancer took 4 years to kill him, and during that time people drifted away the way they do when illness becomes chronic. The casserole brigade came strong in the first few months. Chicken tetrazzini and lasagna and mac and cheese, all in disposable aluminum pans so I wouldn't have to worry about returning dishes. But by the end of year 2, the casseroles had stopped coming. By year 3, even his closest friends from the construction business had stopped calling. I didn't blame them. Dying slowly is hard to watch, and people have their own lives to live. But it meant that when we finally laid Robert to rest, there weren't many people there to say goodbye. Trevor was there, of course, standing stiff and dry-eyed in a suit that looked like he'd bought it for the occasion. His wife Jessica stood beside him, one hand on his arm, the other holding their baby boy Marcus, who squirmed and fussed throughout the service. My sister Beverly drove down from Charlotte, arrived at 6 in the morning, and came straight to the house to help me get dressed, because I couldn't seem to make my hands work properly. A handful of cousins I hadn't seen in years, a few old business associates who felt obligated to show up, the pastor from the church Robert had attended sporadically over the years, whenever he felt guilty about not going more often. We buried him in a simple casket, the cheapest one that didn't look absolutely pitiful, the one the funeral director tried to upsell me from, but I held firm because I couldn't afford anything else. Westview Cemetery, where they'd buried his parents 20 years earlier. I'd picked out a modest headstone, nothing fancy, just his name and dates and beloved husband and father, because that's what you put on headstones. I stood at the graveside in my black dress from J.C. Penney, bought 3 years ago for Robert's aunt's funeral, the same dress I'd worn to 2 other funerals since then, because black is black and nobody notices. Listening to the pastor talk about resurrection and eternal life and God's plan, I felt empty, not sad, not relieved, just empty, like someone had scooped out my insides and left nothing but a hollow shell. Beverly held my hand through the service. She'd always been the strong one, my big sister, 5 years older and infinitely wiser. She'd flown down immediately when I called to tell her Robert had passed. Didn't even ask if I needed her. Just said, "I'll be there tomorrow morning." She'd helped me pick out the casket and the flowers, white roses because they were cheapest, and the program for the service. After the burial, people came back to the house. I don't remember much of it. There were casseroles again. Death brings out the casserole dishes like nothing else, like people don't know how to express sympathy except through carbohydrates and cheese. People murmured condolences, told me how sorry they were, asked if there was anything they could do. I smiled and nodded and thanked them, and said no, I was fine. I'd be fine, just needed some time. And I waited for them to leave, counting down the minutes until I could stop performing grief and just collapse. Trevor stayed after everyone else had gone. He found me in the kitchen, stacking dishes in the sink, grateful for something to do with my hands besides shake. "Maggie, we need to talk." Something in his tone made my stomach clench. Not sympathy, not grief. Business. Can it wait? I'm exhausted, Trevor. It can't wait. It's about Dad's estate. Estate. Like Robert had been some wealthy man with holdings and assets to distribute. The word felt absurd, offensive even. What about it? We need to go through his papers, figure out what's what, make sure everything's in order. Can't that wait a few days? Can't I just... The longer we wait, the more complicated it gets. Trust me on this, Maggie. Better to handle it now. He was already moving toward Robert's study, so I followed. We sat in that small room off the living room where Robert used to work on bids and contracts back when the business was still running. Trevor had papers spread out across the desk. Bank statements, bills, property documents. He'd already been going through his father's things. Going through my things, really. Since this was my house now. Or was it? "Sit down, Maggie." I sat in the chair across from the desk. Trevor stayed standing, his hands braced on the desk, his face serious. He looked like his father in that moment. The same square jaw, the same deep-set eyes, the same frown line between his eyebrows. But where Robert's eyes had always held warmth even in his darkest moods, Trevor's eyes were cold. "I've been reviewing Dad's financial situation," he began. His voice was matter-of-fact, almost clinical. "And I need to be straight with you. It's not good. I know we don't have much money. We don't have any money, Maggie. The checking account has about $8,000 in it. Savings has another 12. There's $15,000 in credit card debt, most of it medical expenses that insurance didn't cover. The house," he tapped a document with his finger. "The house has about $40,000 in equity after the mortgage and the home equity line. But that's it. That's everything." I stared at him, my brain struggling to process what he was saying. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Dad spent everything on his treatment. The experimental drugs, the private nurses, the alternative therapies, everything. The business savings, your retirement accounts, everything. What's left is barely enough to cover the outstanding debts." My mouth had gone dry. but the house is in Dad's name only. You'll inherit it, but you'll also inherit the mortgage and the property taxes and the insurance. Can you afford that on your own? Could I? I hadn't worked in 4 years. My office manager skills were outdated. Who even used Microsoft Office 2010 anymore? I was 62 years old with a 4-year gap in my resume and no references because everyone I used to work with had moved on or retired. Who was going to hire me? I don't know, I whispered. Trevor's expression softened slightly, like he was trying to be kind but didn't quite remember how. Look, I'm not trying to be cruel here. I'm just being realistic. You're probably going to have to sell the house. Use the equity to pay off the debts and set yourself up in something smaller. An apartment, maybe, or one of those senior living communities. Sell the house where I'd lived for 30 years, where I'd celebrated Christmases and birthdays and anniversaries, where I'd nursed Robert through his final years, where I'd built a life, such as it was. Just sell it and start over at 62 with nothing. Your father must have had some kind of plan, I said. My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. He wouldn't have just left me like this. Trevor sighed, and for a moment he looked tired instead of cold. I think Dad thought he had more time, that he'd recover, or at least stabilize, and he could rebuild the savings, work part-time consulting or something, put money aside. But the cancer moved faster than anyone expected in those last few months. He probably just didn't get around to putting things in order. He had 4 years, Trevor. He had 4 years of fighting cancer, Maggie, barely hanging on, in and out of the hospital, barely able to think straight half the time from the pain medication. He wasn't exactly in a position to be planning for the future. Maybe he was right. Maybe Robert had just run out of time, run out of energy, run out of everything except the will to keep breathing one more day. But it hurt. God, it hurt to think that after 32 years of marriage, after sacrificing everything to care for him, this was what I had to show for it. Debt, and an order to sell my home and start over with nothing. Trevor gathered up his papers, folded them, tucked them into a folder. I'll help however I can, he said, though his tone suggested his help would be limited. We can work together to sell the house, split the proceeds after the debts are paid. You'll have something to start over with. Not much, but something. How generous, I said, and I heard the bitterness in my voice. Trevor heard it too. His face hardened. I'm trying to help, Maggie. I'm trying to be fair here. Fair would be your father leaving me something after 32 years of marriage. My father spent every penny he had trying to stay alive. That's not his fault. And it's not mine either. We stared at each other across Robert's desk, the space between us filled with years of mutual dislike and distrust. Just let me know what you decide about the house, Trevor said finally. He grabbed his folder and left, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. I heard the front door close, heard his car start in the driveway. Beverly found me still sitting in Robert's study an hour later, staring at nothing. What did Trevor want? I told her. About the debt, the lack of savings, the house I'd probably have to sell, the apartment or senior living community where I'd spend my final years. Beverly's face darkened with each word. That man, she said when I finished. Even dead, he's still causing you problems. Bev, don't defend him, Maggie. He should have planned better, should have protected you better. 32 years of marriage, and this is what you get? Debt and eviction? I'm not being evicted. You're being forced out of your home. Same thing. She was right, but I didn't have the energy to acknowledge it. Beverly stayed for 3 more days, helping me sort through Robert's clothes, his papers, the accumulated debris of a life. We filled garbage bags with T-shirts worn thin and jeans with holes in the knees. We boxed up tools to donate. We threw away receipts and bank statements and papers that meant nothing now that Robert was gone. Then Beverly had to get back to Charlotte, back to her job as an accountant, and her life that didn't revolve around death and debt. "You call me if you need anything," she said as she hugged me goodbye. "Anything at all. Money, help, someone to yell at. You hear me?" I promised I would. Then she left, and I was alone in the house that might not be mine much longer, surrounded by the ghost of a man who'd left me with nothing. That was on a Tuesday. On Thursday, my entire world changed again. The call came at 2:30 in the afternoon, on a day that had started like every other day since Robert died. I woke up in our bed, my bed now, though I still slept on my side like Robert might come back any moment and need his spot. I made coffee in the pot that was too big for one person, but I couldn't bring myself to buy a smaller one. I sat on the back porch, staring at Robert's garden that was dying from neglect, and tried to figure out what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. The phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting condolence calls for 2 weeks, and I was tired of it. Tired of hearing how sorry people were, how Robert was in a better place now, how I'd get through this with time and God's grace and whatever other platitudes people offered when they didn't know what else to say. But I answered. Some ingrained sense of politeness I couldn't shake. "Hello?" "Mrs. Hayes? This is Dennis Harrison from Harrison and Associates. I was your husband's attorney." I sat up straighter, suddenly alert. "Yes, Mr. Harrison. Trevor mentioned you'd be reaching out about the estate." "Actually, Mrs. Hayes, I'm calling about something separate from the probate proceedings. It's regarding a life insurance policy your husband maintained through his business." My heart jumped. "Life insurance?" "Yes, ma'am. It's a private policy Mr. Hayes took out approximately 15 years ago through Northwestern Mutual. The death benefit is $2 million. $2 million. The words didn't seem real. They hung in the air like something from a dream, too impossibly good to be true. I didn't know he had life insurance," I stammered. "Trevor said there was nothing. He went through all of Robert's papers. This policy was held separately from Mr. Hayes's business accounts and personal files. It's quite possible Trevor wasn't aware of its existence. The premium payments were automatically deducted from a separate bank account, one that was closed when the business shuttered 3 years ago. At that point, Mr. Hayes switched to annual manual payments. $2 million. Enough to pay off the debts with money to spare. Enough to keep the house, make repairs, maybe even have something left over for emergencies. Enough to live on until I figured out what came next. Robert had protected me after all. Robert had planned ahead, made sure I'd be taken care of, even if he couldn't tell me about it before he died. Maybe he'd wanted it to be a surprise. Maybe he'd been too sick at the end to remember to mention it. Maybe. "Mrs. Hayes, I need to inform you about something regarding the beneficiary designation on this policy." Something in Mr. Harrison's tone made my chest tighten, made my heart start beating faster, made the room feel suddenly too warm. "What about it?" The beneficiary designation was updated 6 years ago, March 15th, 6 years ago to be precise. The current beneficiary listed on the policy is not you, Mrs. Hayes. The room tilted. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm sorry. What? The sole beneficiary listed on this policy is a Ms. Alicia Morgan. According to the documentation I have, she was employed as your husband's executive assistant at Hayes Construction from approximately 8 years ago until the business closed 3 years ago. I couldn't breathe. That can't be right. I've reviewed the documentation multiple times, Mrs. Hayes. The beneficiary change form is signed by your husband and notarized. Ms. Morgan is clearly listed as the sole beneficiary for the full $2 million death benefit. But why? Why would he? I couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't make my brain form the words. I don't have that information, Mrs. Hayes. I'm simply the attorney of record for the policy, required by law to notify all interested parties of its existence and terms. I'm required to inform you as the surviving spouse that this policy exists and that you may have grounds to contest the beneficiary designation if you believe the change was made under duress or without your husband's full understanding. His words were washing over me, but not quite registering. Beneficiary designation, contest, duress, full understanding. All I could think was, Alicia Morgan. Mrs. Hayes, are you still there? Yes, I whispered. I'm here. I understand this must be shocking news. If you'd like to schedule a time to come to my office and review the documentation. Who is she? This Alicia Morgan? I'm sorry? You said she was Robert's assistant. Do you know anything else about her? Only what's in the policy documentation, Mrs. Hayes. Name, social security number, address. At the time the beneficiary was changed. I can provide you with copies of everything if you'd like. Yes, please. I need to see it. All of it. Of course. I'll have my secretary prepare copies and you can pick them up at your convenience, or I can mail them to you if you prefer. I'll come get them. Today. When can I come? We're open until 5. Any time before then is fine. I hung up and sat there on the couch, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. Alicia Morgan. I knew that name, knew her face. Robert had hired her 8 years ago, right around the time business started picking up again after a slow few years. She'd been in her mid-20s back then. Pretty, professional, efficient. She'd come to the house a few times over the years to drop off papers for Robert to sign when he was working from home, to pick up documents he needed for a meeting, to deliver messages when his cell phone wasn't working. She'd always been polite, always called me Mrs. Hayes, never stayed longer than necessary, just in and out, a quick smile, a thank you, have a nice day. I'd never thought twice about her, and now she was getting $2 million of my husband's life insurance money. The affair had to have been going on for years. Had to have been. Why else would Robert make his secretary the beneficiary of a $2 million life insurance policy? Why else would he change it 6 years ago, right around the time he got his diagnosis, right around the time everything started falling apart? I thought about all those late nights Robert claimed he was at the office, working on bids, finishing paperwork, all those business trips that seemed to last longer than they should, to places that seemed too far away for the size of the job. The way he'd started keeping his phone face down on the table, password protected, always taking it with him even to the bathroom. I told myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid, insecure, One of those suspicious wives who drove their husbands away with constant accusations and distrust. But I'd been right to worry. I just hadn't worried enough. I didn't tell anyone for 3 days. I moved through the house like a ghost, going through motions without purpose. Wake up, coffee, stare at nothing, go to bed, repeat. I kept pulling up Alicia Morgan's social media profiles on my phone, scrolling through her Facebook and Instagram over and over looking for something. Proof of the affair, evidence of guilt, some explanation that would make sense of this nightmare. Her Facebook page hadn't been updated in months. The profile picture showed her smiling at the camera, professional and polished. Maybe 40 friends, mostly people with names I didn't recognize. No relationship status listed. No photos of her with Robert. Nothing incriminating. Her Instagram was even sparser. Maybe 20 posts total, all generic and impersonal. A coffee cup on a cafe table, the latte art forming a perfect heart. A sunset over the Atlanta skyline, all orange and pink and purple. A bookshelf crammed with titles I couldn't quite read in the photo. An orange tabby cat sitting in a window, looking out at the world with half-closed eyes. No pictures of Robert, no romantic quotes or cryptic messages, no hints of a relationship, secret or otherwise. No hashtags about love or loss or anything personal. It was like she was deliberately keeping her life private, hidden behind a wall of mundane photos that revealed nothing. She was beautiful, though. I couldn't deny that. Mixed race, with caramel brown skin that looked perfect even in casual snapshots. Dark hair, long and thick, the kind of hair I'd had when I was young before age and stress turned it gray and brittle. High cheekbones, full lips, a smile that lit up her whole face in the few photos where she was actually smiling. She looked young, vibrant, alive, full of potential and possibility. Everything I wasn't anymore. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, really looked, and saw a 62-year-old woman with gray hair I'd stopped dyeing 2 years ago when Robert's medical bills got too high to justify $40 at the salon. Skin that showed every year I'd lived, every stress I'd endured, every night I'd gone without sleep. A body that was soft and tired from years of stress eating and no exercise because who has time for the gym when you're caring for someone dying of cancer? Of course, Robert had chosen her. Why wouldn't he? She was everything I used to be and could never be again. On Saturday morning, I finally told Beverly. She'd been calling every day since she got back to Charlotte, checking in on me, making sure I was eating and sleeping and not falling apart completely. I'd been lying, saying I was fine, saying I was managing, saying I'd start sorting through Robert's things and making plans for the house any day now. This time when she called, I told her the truth. "There's a life insurance policy," I said, my voice flat. $2 million. I heard her gasp. "Maggie, that's wonderful. See, I told you Robert had to have some kind of plan. He wouldn't have just left you with nothing. The beneficiary is his secretary." Silence. Long, stretching silence. "What?" "Alicia Morgan, his executive assistant, the girl who worked for him. He changed the beneficiary 6 years ago. She gets everything." More silence. Then, "That son of a bitch." "Bev, no. I'm not going to mince words here, Maggie. That absolute son of a bitch. He was cheating on you. For years, probably. And he was planning to take care of his mistress after he died and leave you with nothing? After everything you did for him? After you gave up your career, your savings, your health to take care of him?" We don't know for sure that he was cheating. Oh, come on, Maggie. What other explanation is there? Men don't make their secretaries the beneficiaries of $2 million life insurance policies out of the goodness of their hearts. This wasn't some employee bonus. This was a man taking care of his mistress. But even as she said it, even as I'd been thinking the exact same thing for 3 days, something didn't feel right. Something about the whole situation felt off in a way I couldn't quite articulate. Robert had been a lot of things. Stubborn, yes. Moody, sometimes. Distant when work was stressing him out. But he wasn't a liar. He didn't hide things. When he was angry, he told you. When he was unhappy, you knew. When something was bothering him, he'd talk about it until you wanted to scream just to make him stop talking. He didn't sneak around, didn't keep secrets. At least, I'd never thought he did. You need to fight this, Beverly said firmly, pulling me out of my thoughts. Get a lawyer. Contest the beneficiary designation. That money should be yours. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, he said I could contest it, said I might have grounds if the change was made under duress or if Robert wasn't in his right mind. Then do it. Don't let this girl steal what you're entitled to, Maggie. You earned that money, every penny of it. You earned it by standing by that man for 32 years. You earned it by sacrificing everything to care for him. Don't let her just walk away with it. But I wasn't sure what I was entitled to anymore. Wasn't sure of anything except that my entire life had been built on lies I'd never even suspected. After I hung up with Beverly, I went to Robert's study again. Stood in the doorway, looking at the room where he'd spent so much time. His desk was still covered with papers. I hadn't had the energy to clean it yet. His coffee mug was still sitting on a coaster, half empty, probably growing mold by now. His reading glasses were folded on top of a stack of invoices from 3 years ago. The room still smelled like him. Old Spice aftershave and the cherry pipe tobacco he'd smoked occasionally, even though I'd begged him to quit. The smell was fading now, dissipating into nothing, but it was still there if I breathed deep enough. I missed him. Even knowing what he'd done, even feeling betrayed and angry and lost, I missed him. How could I miss someone who'd lied to me, who'd been having an affair, who'd planned to leave everything to his mistress? But I did. I missed the sound of his voice, the way he'd hum while he made breakfast on Sunday mornings, the weight of his hand in mine, the life we'd built together, flawed as it was. I started going through his desk drawers again, more carefully this time, looking for evidence, looking for the truth, looking for anything that would explain what the hell had happened to my marriage. The top drawers held the usual debris of a life: pens that didn't work, paper clips, old business cards from contractors long retired, post-it notes with phone numbers and addresses and cryptic reminders that meant nothing now, nothing incriminating, nothing revealing. Then I tried the bottom right drawer. It was locked. I'd never noticed that before. Or maybe I had and just never cared. Robert was entitled to his privacy, entitled to his locked drawers and his passwords and his private spaces. Marriage didn't mean you had to share every single thing, did it? But he was dead now, and I was entitled to answers. I found a screwdriver in the kitchen junk drawer, went back to the study, started prying at the lock, not caring if I damaged it, not caring about anything except getting that drawer open. It took me 20 minutes and 3 broken fingernails. The lock finally gave way with a crack that sounded too loud in the quiet house. Inside was a manila folder, thick, bulging with papers, the kind lawyers use for important documents. I pulled it out with shaking hands, set it on the desk, stared at it for a long moment, suddenly afraid of what I might find inside. Love letters, maybe. Emails printed out. Hotel receipts. Proof of the affair I'd been denying but knew must be true. I opened the folder. Inside were documents. Legal documents. Birth certificates. Adoption papers. Sealed court orders. Pages and pages of official-looking paperwork with stamps and signatures and raised seals. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The names meant nothing to me. The dates seemed random. Why would Robert have adoption papers in his locked drawer? Then I saw my own name, Margaret Louise Thompson. That was my maiden name. I hadn't been Margaret Thompson in 43 years. It was a birth certificate, old, yellowed slightly at the edges, dated 37 years ago. Mother, Margaret Louise Thompson, age 17. Father unknown. Infant, female, born March 8, 1988. Weight, 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Length, 19 inches. My hand started shaking so hard I almost dropped the paper. My daughter. This was my daughter's birth certificate. The daughter I'd given up when I was 17 and stupid and in love with a boy named Marcus, who'd wanted nothing to do with me once he found out I was pregnant. The daughter I'd held for exactly 10 minutes after she was born, counting every second, memorizing her face because I knew I'd never see her again. The daughter my mother had made me give up because unmarried pregnancy was a sin and a shame and something we didn't talk about in our family. Robert knew. How did he know? I'd never told him, never told anyone except Beverly, and she would never have betrayed that confidence, not in a million years. But here it was, in black and white, in Robert's locked drawer, my daughter's birth certificate. I picked up the next document with trembling hands, adoption decree. The infant had been placed with a family in North Carolina, Michael and Patricia Johnson of Durham. The records were sealed by court order, as was standard in 1988. No contact between birth mother and adoptive family, closed adoption, final. But if the records were sealed, how did Robert get these documents? How did he, private investigator reports? That's how. There were multiple reports stapled together spanning several years. Someone named Marcus Chen, licensed private investigator, had been hired by Robert Hayes to locate information about a child born March 8, 1988, to Margaret Louise Thompson. The reports were thorough, painfully thorough. Chen had spent 2 years tracking down leads, following paper trails, calling in favors, bribing clerks, doing whatever it took to trace what had happened to that baby girl. He'd found the adoption records first. Then he'd tracked down the adoptive family. Michael and Patricia Johnson had divorced when the child, my daughter, was 12 years old. Michael had moved to Oregon, remarried, had 2 more children, apparently lost touch with his daughter from his first marriage. Patricia had kept custody, raised the girl alone in Durham. Patricia Johnson had died 5 years ago, ovarian cancer, just like Robert's first wife, just like so many women, gone too soon. That detail hit me like a punch to the stomach. My daughter had lost her adoptive mother. Had she mourned? Had she been alone? Had she wished she knew where she came from, wished she could find her birth mother for comfort? After Patricia's death, Chen had continued tracking. He'd found that my daughter had moved to Atlanta 4 years ago, had taken a job with a literacy nonprofit, something about helping disadvantaged children learn to read, lived in a small apartment in Decatur, kept to herself, didn't seem to have much family, few close friends based on her sparse social media presence, and somewhere along the way, she'd legally changed her name. The Johnsons had named her Alicia Marie Johnson, but when she turned 18, she'd gone to court and changed her last name to Morgan. Alicia Morgan. My hands went numb. The papers fluttered to the desk. Alicia Morgan was my daughter, the woman Robert had made his life insurance beneficiary, the woman I'd thought was his mistress, the woman I'd been jealous of, angry at, ready to fight in court. She was my daughter. Robert's notes were scattered throughout the file, written in his messy handwriting on post-it notes, stuck to various documents. She looks like Maggie, same eyes, same smile. Works with disadvantaged kids, teaching them to read. Maggie would be so proud. She seems lonely. No family nearby. Few friends. Wish I could tell Maggie. Should I tell Maggie? When? How? What if she's angry? I went looking without asking. That last note was dated 2 years ago, right around the time Robert's cancer came back with a vengeance, right around the time we'd stopped talking about anything except appointments and medications and whether he could keep food down. He'd wanted to tell me. He'd found our daughter, even though he'd never met her before she was born, even though he had no biological connection to her. And he'd wanted to reunite us. But then he got sick again, sicker than before, and the timing was never right. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, opened Instagram, pulled up Alicia Morgan's profile. I'd been looking at these pictures for days, seeing them as evidence of an affair, seeing her as the other woman. But now I looked at them differently. That coffee cup photo. I took pictures of my coffee, too, back when I still had time for things like that. That sunset. I loved sunsets. Used to watch them from the back porch until Robert got sick and I didn't have time for beauty anymore. That bookshelf. I could almost read some of the titles now that I knew what I was looking for. Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, Alice Walker. The same books I'd loved at her age. That cat, Orange Tabby. I'd always wanted a cat, but Robert was allergic. These weren't the photos of Robert's mistress. These were the photos of my daughter, my baby, the girl I'd given up 37 years ago, and looking at her face now, really looking, not just glancing. I saw what I should have seen all along. She had my eyes, exactly my eyes, brown with flecks of gold that caught the light. My mother used to say I had my father's eyes, the only thing I'd inherited from a man who died before I was born. She had my mother's nose, straight, slightly too long, the one feature I'd always hated about my own face. She had the same dimple in her left cheek that I saw every morning in the mirror when I bothered to actually look at myself instead of just going through the motions. How had I not seen it before? How had I looked at her face half a dozen times over the years and never once recognized my own features staring back at me? Because I wasn't looking for her. Because the possibility that my daughter, given up for adoption 37 years ago, record sealed, family unknown, could somehow end up working for my husband in the same city was too impossible, too much like bad fiction to even consider. But Robert had considered it. Robert had hired a private investigator and spent thousands of dollars and 2 years of searching to find her. Robert had brought her into our lives, close enough that I'd seen her face, heard her voice, shared space with her in my own home. Why? The insurance policy. $2 million left to Alicia Morgan, left to my daughter. Suddenly, it didn't look like betrayal anymore. It didn't look like an affair or infidelity or any of the things I'd been torturing myself with for 3 days. It looked like something else entirely. It looked like Robert trying to give me back what had been taken from me 37 years ago. It looked like love. I called Mr. Harrison back that same afternoon, my hands still shaking, my voice barely steady. "Mrs. Hayes," he answered on the second ring. "I have those copies ready for you whenever you'd like to pick them up. I need contact information for Alicia Morgan. Do you have that?" There was a pause. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm not sure I'm comfortable providing. Please," my voice cracked. "I'm not going to contest the policy. I just need to talk to her. I need to understand why Robert did this. I need to—" I stopped, not sure how to explain without telling him everything. "Please, Mr. Harrison, I just need her phone number, her email, something." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "I have an email address and a phone number from the insurance paperwork. Those are considered public information in the context of the policy. I can provide those to you, but I cannot give you her physical address without her permission. Is that acceptable?" Yes, that's fine. That's enough." He read them off slowly. I wrote them down on the back of an envelope, my handwriting barely legible, letters shaking across the page. After I hung up, I sat there staring at the phone number for a long time. This was my daughter's phone number. If I called it, I might hear her voice, might have a conversation with the baby I'd given away 37 years ago, might finally have the chance to explain, to apologize, to tell her all the things I'd wanted to say for decades, but never had anyone to say them to. But what would I even say? "Hi, I'm your birth mother. Surprise. Sorry I gave you up. Sorry it took 37 years for us to meet. Sorry your adoptive mother died and I wasn't there. Sorry for everything. I couldn't call. Not yet. I needed to think, to plan, to figure out what I wanted to say and how to say it without falling apart completely. Instead, I opened my laptop, the one I'd bought 5 years ago and barely used since Robert got sick, and pulled up my email, created a new message, stared at the blank screen. What do you say to the daughter you gave up for adoption? I started typing, deleted it, started again, deleted again. Finally, on my 5th attempt, I wrote, "Ms. Morgan, I know this must be unexpected, but I really need to speak with you. It's about Robert and about something I found in his papers. Please, if you can, contact me. It's important. Margaret Hayes." I hit send before I could overthink it any further. Then I tried calling the number. It rang 4 times. Generic voicemail. I hung up without leaving a message. Couldn't figure out what to say in 30 seconds. Tried again an hour later. Same result. This time I forced myself to leave a message. "Ms. Morgan, this is Margaret Hayes, Robert Hayes' widow. I found something in my husband's papers, and I really need to speak with you. Please call me back." No call back that day, or the next, or the day after that. I tried the apartment address from Robert's folder, Unit 2C in Decatur. The neighbor said she hadn't been there in weeks. I left a note under her door with my phone number. Then at 11 p.m. 4 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" Silence. Then a voice. Young, female, cautious. "Mrs. Hayes?" My breath caught. "Alicia?" "Yes, I got your messages. I'm sorry I didn't respond sooner. Can we meet? Please. I need to understand. Did he tell you? About who I am?" My throat tightened. "No, but I found documents. Your birth certificate. I know who you are." I heard her breath hitch. "So you know. I need to hear it from you, please." A long pause. "There's a coffee shop on Ponce de Leon. grounds for change. Can you meet me there tomorrow morning? 10 o'clock? Yes, I'll be there. Mrs. Hayes, I never wanted to hurt you. The line went dead. I arrived at the coffee shop at 9:40. Ordered coffee I wouldn't drink. Sat where I could see the door. At 10:02 she walked in, and there she was, my daughter, taller than I'd realized, slender, dark hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a simple green blouse. And God, she looked like me at that age. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked toward me, and I stood. Mrs. Hayes. Maggie, please, call me Maggie. We sat. The table between us felt like an ocean. I didn't know, she said, about you, not until Mr. Hayes told me. When? 6 years ago. He came to the nonprofit where I was working, said he'd been looking for me, that he knew my birth mother, that you had been trying to find me for years. I wasn't, I whispered. I didn't know he was searching, she nodded. I know that now, but at the time I believed him. He seemed so sincere. He told me how you'd gotten pregnant at 17, how your family was religious, how you had to give me up. He said you thought about me every day. He said you wanted to meet me, but were terrified I'd reject you. Tears streamed down my face. He asked if I wanted to meet you. I said yes. I'd spent my whole life wondering about my birth mother. So why didn't we meet? Her eyes filled with tears. Because I asked him not to, not right away. I was scared. I wanted to know who you were first, what kind of person you were. So Robert gave you a job. Yes, to give me a chance to be around you sometimes, to see how you and he interacted. I remembered her coming to the house, always watching. I saw how worried you were about money, about Mr. Hayes's business. Then he got sick, and I saw how you took care of him, how strong you were. I wanted to tell you who I was, but the timing was never right. So you waited. I kept waiting for the right moment, but it never came. The business closed. We stayed in touch. He'd call sometimes. Tell me about you. He talked about you constantly, Maggie, how smart you were, how strong. He never told me he'd found you. He wanted to, but he was afraid you'd be angry that he'd searched without permission, afraid you'd be hurt that I'd wanted to wait. He kept saying he'd tell you after he recovered. He didn't recover. No. Her voice broke, and by the end, I don't think he had the energy to explain. We sat in silence. The insurance policy, I said. Why? She looked down. He called it my inheritance, money to help me build the life you'd wanted me to have. $2 million. I didn't want it. When he first told me, I said no. It was too much. You were his wife. But he insisted. He said it was the only way he could fix what happened to us. But you still didn't tell me. I thought maybe after he passed I'd take the money and disappear, and you'd never have to deal with a daughter who showed up 37 years too late. But his lawyer told me. I'd asked Mr. Harrison not to, but he said legally he had to. I reached across the table, covered her hand with mine. She didn't pull away. I held you when you were born. They gave me 10 minutes. That's all. 10 minutes before they took you away. Her tears were flowing freely now. I've thought about you my whole life, wondered who you were, why you gave me up, whether you ever thought about me. Every single day. Every day for 37 years. My adoptive parents were good people. They loved me. But I always felt like something was missing. I felt that way too. We sat there holding hands, Two women connected by blood and separated by time, crying together in a busy coffee shop. This was my daughter, my baby, home at last. Over the next few weeks, Morgan and I built something fragile and precious. We met for coffee twice a week, then 3 times. Then she started coming to the house. We'd sit in the kitchen or on the porch talking for hours. She told me about growing up in Durham, about her father leaving when she was 12, about her mother's cancer when Morgan was 23. She knew I was looking for you. Mom, Patricia, encouraged it, said it was natural to want to know where you came from. She sounds like a good woman. She was. I told her about my life, about getting pregnant at 17, about my mother's shame, about being shipped off to stay with an aunt so the church wouldn't know. They told me it was for the best, that I was too young, that you deserved a real family. Were they right? I thought about it. Maybe. I don't know. I was 17, scared, alone. But I should have fought harder to keep you. You were just a kid yourself. I was, but you were mine. She told me about her work, grant writing for nonprofits. I think it comes from being adopted, always feeling like I had to pay it forward. Beverly came to visit, suspicious at first. So this is the secretary, she said when I introduced them. This is my daughter, I corrected. Beverly looked between us, seeing the resemblance. I'll be damned. Over coffee, I explained everything. Beverly listened, her expression softening. Robert did good, she said finally. Still should have told you while he was alive, though. Maybe, but he did his best. Then Trevor found out about the insurance policy. He showed up furious. $2 million and you didn't mention it? Trevor, I just found out. And the beneficiary is his secretary? He paced the living room. You're going to contest this, right? It's complicated. What's complicated? Dad had an affair. That money should go to family. She's not what you think. Then explain it. I almost told him. About the adoption. About realizing Alicia was my daughter. But something stopped me. The anger in his face. I'm still figuring things out. We'll figure it out fast. Because I'm hiring a lawyer. As Dad's son, I have standing to challenge this. Trevor, please. That money could secure my son's future. And you want me to hand it over to Dad's mistress? She's not his mistress. Trevor stared at me. Then what is she? I can't explain right now, but she's not what you think. You're being naive. Dad betrayed you. We don't have the whole story. We have enough. He left, slamming the door. I stood in the empty living room, feeling everything crushing down on me. Trevor was going to fight, which meant legal battles, everything becoming public. I needed to be ready. Trevor hired a lawyer, Richard Sanchez, who specialized in estate disputes. They filed a formal challenge, claiming Robert had been unduly influenced during his illness. Mr. Harrison, no, our lawyer, Sarah Chen, called weeks later. Mrs. Hayes, I need to ask, will you be supporting Trevor's challenge? Absolutely not. Morgan is my daughter. Robert left it to her for a reason. This information significantly changes the case. Do you have documentation? We have DNA tests, birth certificates, adoption records, everything Robert collected. I'll need copies, and you should hire your own attorney. Sarah Chen reviewed everything. Mrs. Hayes, you have a strong case, very strong. The biological relationship is provable. Robert's intent is clearly documented. The hearing was held on a Tuesday morning in July. Morgan and I arrived together. Trevor was already there with Sanchez, sitting on the opposite side. He wouldn't look at us. Judge Patricia Thornton presided, a black woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes. Sanchez presented first. His case was straightforward but ugly. Robert Hayes had been terminally ill, vulnerable. Alicia Morgan had been a young employee with unusual access. The beneficiary change represented undue influence. He made Morgan sound like a predator. Then it was our turn. Sarah methodically presented the documentation, the sealed adoption records, the investigator reports showing how Robert had spent 2 years searching for Morgan, the notes in Robert's handwriting explaining his reasoning. Your Honor, this wasn't manipulation. This was a man who discovered his wife had given up a child 37 years ago. A man who found that child and brought her back. The insurance policy was an inheritance, a way to provide for his wife's daughter. Judge Thornton examined the documents. You're claiming Ms. Morgan is Mrs. Hayes's biological daughter? Yes, Your Honor. We have documentation. Has this been verified through DNA testing? Yes, Your Honor. Sarah submitted the DNA results. 99.97% probability of biological mother-daughter relationship. Sanchez objected. This is convenient timing. These tests were performed after the challenge was filed. We have his private investigator's reports dating back 8 years, Sarah countered, and his handwritten notes. I'll hear testimony, the judge said. Ms. Morgan, please take the stand. Morgan walked to the witness stand on trembling legs. Sanchez questioned her aggressively. Ms. Morgan, how long did you work for Mr. Hayes? About 5 years. And during that time, what was the nature of your relationship? He was my employer, and he was helping me get to know my birth mother. Your alleged birth mother. My birth mother. The DNA tests prove it. Did you ever meet him outside of work? Occasionally. He'd call to tell me about Maggie, about my mother. Secret meetings, private phone calls. Sounds like an affair. It wasn't an affair. He was trying to help me understand who my mother was. And while he was helping you, he made you the beneficiary of a $2 million policy. He said it was my inheritance. Or money to keep quiet about the affair. There was no affair, Judge Thornton intervened. Mr. Sanchez, if you have evidence of an inappropriate relationship, present it. If not, move on. Sanchez had no evidence. Sarah questioned Morgan gently, how Robert had found her, how she'd wanted to know me before revealing herself. Did you manipulate Mr. Hayes? No, never. Did you have any romantic relationship with him? No. He loved Maggie. He talked about her constantly. Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the stand, legs shaking. Sarah questioned me about giving up my daughter, about the shame and grief I'd carried. Mrs. Hayes, did you know your husband was searching for your daughter? No, he never told me. Why do you think he kept it secret? Because he was afraid of hurting me if he couldn't find her, afraid of my reaction when he did. And now that you know Ms. Morgan is your daughter, how do you feel about the insurance policy? I understand it. Robert was trying to give me back something precious. The money doesn't matter. What matters is that he found my daughter. Sanchez cross-examined me, suggesting I was being manipulated. Isn't it possible Ms. Morgan discovered your history and crafted a story? The DNA tests don't lie. How do you know this woman is really your daughter? Because I can see it. She has my eyes, my mother's nose. I knew the moment I really looked at her. Trevor testified too, said his father had been confused at the end, said he deserved to inherit something. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Judge Thornton said she needed time to review and would issue her ruling within 2 weeks. Morgan and I walked out into the hot July sun. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think we told the truth. The rest is up to the judge." The ruling came 13 days later. Sarah called. "Mrs. Hayes, Judge Thornton issued her decision. She's ruling in Ms. Morgan's favor." Relief washed over me. "Thank you." The judge found the evidence compelling, the documentation proving the biological relationship, combined with Robert's clear intent. I called Morgan. "We won." I heard her start to cry. "Thank God. The money is yours, just like Robert wanted. I don't care about the money. I just wanted it to be over. It is over. Now we can move forward." The insurance money came through 4 weeks later. Morgan immediately paid off my mortgage, $43,000. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. You spent 4 years taking care of Robert. You deserve to keep your home." She put another $50,000 in my savings. With the rest, she started a nonprofit, the Morgan Hayes Foundation, named after her chosen name and after Robert. The foundation's mission: helping connect adoptees with birth families, providing resources, support, counseling. "I want to help other people find what we found," she said. "I want to fix what's broken." She rented office space in Grant Park, hired staff, created programs. I became her first volunteer. Together we helped reunite families, adoptees searching for birth parents, parents searching for children they'd given up. The first reunion we facilitated was a woman named Carol, 53, searching for her biological mother for 30 years. We found her mother in Augusta. The reunion was beautiful, tears and hugs and lost time being recovered. "Thank you for giving me back my mother," Carol said. I thought about what Robert had given me. "It's what we do," I said. Morgan bought a modest house in Grant Park, started dating a social worker named Daniel who volunteered at the foundation. "He's good," I told her. "I like him." "I like him too." Beverly became a regular visitor, volunteering monthly. "I'm glad Robert found her," Beverly said one day. "He did good with this." Trevor never came around for years. I sent him a letter explaining everything, inviting him to meet Morgan. He never responded. It hurt, but I understood. Maybe someday he'd find peace with it. In the first year, the foundation helped reunite 18 families. In the second year, 43. By the third year, 72 reunions. Morgan and Daniel got married in the 4th year. Small ceremony in our backyard. I walked my daughter down the aisle, the daughter I'd held for 10 minutes, 37 years earlier, the daughter Robert had found and brought back to me. As I placed her hand in Daniel's, I looked up at the sky. "Thank you, Robert." I'm 67 now. Morgan is 33. We have dinner together every Sunday. Beverly joins us when she can. Daniel is always there, and now their daughter, my granddaughter, Evelyn Rose, joins us too. Evelyn is 18 months old. She calls me Mimi in a voice that melts my heart. The foundation is thriving. We've helped more than 200 families reunite. We've got a staff of 8, regular funding. We named the building after Robert, the Robert Hayes Center for Family Reunion. There's a plaque by the door with his picture. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give is to heal what was broken. Trevor reached out 6 months ago. Just an email. "Maggie, I've been thinking about Dad, about everything. I'm sorry for how I reacted. I was angry and couldn't see past my own pain. I'd like to meet your daughter if she's willing. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to start over. Trevor, I wrote back immediately. Told him he was welcome any time. He visited last month. Met Morgan, met Daniel, met Evelyn. It was awkward at first, but by the end, I saw something soften in Trevor's face. She looks like Dad, he said, watching Morgan play with Evelyn. Around the eyes. She looks like me, too. Yeah, she does. He left with promises to visit again, to try to build something from the wreckage. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm willing to try. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry about how things unfolded, if I wish Robert had told me while he was alive. I tell them the truth. I'm not angry. I'm grateful. Grateful that Robert loved me enough to search for my daughter. Grateful that he found her against all odds. Grateful that he tried to give us both a second chance. Robert Hayes left his secretary $2 million in life insurance. But that secretary was my daughter, the baby I'd held for 10 minutes and thought I'd lost forever, the girl I'd mourned for 37 years. And in leaving her that money, in finding her and bringing her into our lives, Robert gave me something infinitely more valuable than any insurance payout. He gave me back the piece of my heart I'd been missing for 37 years. He gave me my daughter. He gave me hope. He gave me healing. He gave me a second chance to be the mother I'd wanted to be when I was 17 and scared and alone. And that's worth more than any amount of money. That's worth everything. After our first meeting at the coffee shop, Morgan and I sat for another hour, neither of us wanting to leave. We'd found each other after 37 years, and the idea of separating, even just to go home, felt unbearable. Tell me about your childhood, I said. Please, I missed so much. I want to know everything. So she told me about her first day of school, how she'd cried until her mother, Patricia, came and sat in the classroom with her for the entire first week, about learning to ride a bike at 8 years old, falling and scraping her knee so badly it still had a scar, about her 10th birthday party, a sleepover with 6 friends where they'd stayed up all night watching movies and eating too much pizza. Mom was always there, Morgan said softly. Even when Dad left, even when things were hard financially, she was always there. She worked 2 jobs sometimes, but she never missed a school play or a parent-teacher conference. She sounds like she was an amazing mother. She was, and she loved me so much, but... Morgan paused, her fingers tracing patterns on her coffee cup. There was always this thing she couldn't give me, this piece of my history. She tried. She'd answer my questions about adoption, told me it was okay to be curious, but she couldn't tell me about you. She didn't know. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. You were 17, Maggie. You did what you thought was best. I should have done more. We talked about my life, too, about my mother, stern and religious, who died 10 years ago without ever speaking about the adoption again. About my first marriage to Marcus, brief and painful. About meeting Robert and thinking I'd finally found stability. He really loved you, Morgan said. In all those conversations we had, he never spoke about you with anything but admiration. He'd tell me stories, like the time you organized his entire office filing system in one weekend, or how you'd learned to cook his mother's recipes just to make her feel welcome. He was so proud of you. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Robert had been proud of me. Even when I felt like I was failing, like I wasn't enough, he'd seen something worth being proud of. I wish he'd told me about finding you, I said. I wish we'd had more time. Me too. But maybe this was how it was supposed to happen. Maybe we needed to find each other on our own terms, without him there to mediate. Maybe she was right. Over those first few weeks, we built routines: coffee on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, lunch on Saturdays, Sunday dinner at my house where I'd cook the meals my mother had taught me: pot roast, collard greens, cornbread, sweet potato pie. Morgan would help me in the kitchen, and we'd fall into an easy rhythm. Her chopping vegetables while I seasoned the meat. Her asking questions about family recipes while I taught her the way my grandmother had taught my mother, who'd taught me. 3 generations, I said one Sunday, watching her stir the greens. My grandmother, me, you. The chain isn't broken after all. She smiled, that dimpled smile that was so much like mine. No, it's not broken. When the court hearing came, I was terrified. Not of losing the money. I'd meant what I said. The money didn't matter. But of losing Morgan. What if the judge didn't believe us? What if Trevor's anger poisoned everything? What if this fragile thing we were building shattered under the weight of legal scrutiny? The night before the hearing, Morgan came over. We sat on the back porch, watching fireflies dance in the darkness. "What if we lose?" she asked quietly. "Then we fight again. And if we lose again, we keep fighting. Because you're my daughter, and no court can take that away." "I'm scared, Maggie." "Me too, baby. Me too." I took her hand. "But we're going to be okay. No matter what happens tomorrow, we're going to be okay. Because we found each other. That's the only thing that really matters." During the hearing, when Trevor testified, I saw the pain in his face. He'd lost his father. He'd watched Robert die slowly, just like I had. And now he felt betrayed, cast aside for a stranger he couldn't understand was family. I wanted to comfort him, wanted to explain that this wasn't about taking anything from him. But he wouldn't look at me, wouldn't listen. After the judge ruled in our favor, after the paperwork was signed and the money transferred, Morgan and I went back to my house and just sat together in silence. "It's really over," she said finally. "One chapter's over. Now we get to write the next one." The foundation became our shared purpose. Every family we reunited felt like healing, not just for them, but for us too. We understood their pain, the ache of separation, the wondering, the grief of lost time. There was Elena, 47, who'd been searching for her birth mother for 20 years. We found her mother living 3 towns away. They'd been so close all that time and never knew. There was James, 62, who'd given up a son for adoption when he was 19. We found his son, now 43, a doctor in Tennessee with 3 children. James got to meet his grandchildren, hold them, be part of their lives. There was Maria, 31, who'd been adopted from Guatemala as a baby. We helped her connect with her birth family, her siblings she'd never known existed. She flew down to meet them, and the photos she sent us showed her surrounded by people who looked just like her, the family she'd always wondered about. Each reunion reminded me of what Robert had given me. Each hug between long-lost family members echoed the hug Morgan and I had shared in that coffee shop. When Evelyn was born, I held her in the hospital and felt the weight of 3 generations in my arms. My daughter, my granddaughter. The family line I'd thought was severed, healed, and continuing. "Hi, sweet girl," I whispered to her. "I'm your Mimi. I have so many stories to tell you. About your mama, about your great-grandma, about all the women who came before you. You're part of something bigger than you know." Evelyn grabbed my finger with her tiny hand, and I felt it, the connection, the continuity, the unbroken line. When Trevor finally came to visit, 5 years after the court ruling, it was Morgan who welcomed him first. She was gracious, kind, extending a hand he didn't deserve but needed. "I know this is awkward," she told him. "I know you didn't ask for any of this, but we're family now, whether we like it or not, and family shows up for each other." Trevor's son Marcus, now 8 years old, took to Evelyn immediately. They played in the backyard while we adults sat on the porch and tried to navigate the complicated mess of our relationships. "Dad would have liked this," Trevor said finally, watching the kids play. "All of us together. He would have wanted this." "Yes," I said. "He would have." It wasn't perfect. Trevor and I would never have the warm relationship I had with Beverly or even with Morgan. Too much hurt lay between us, too many years of distance and distrust. But it was something. It was a start. And sometimes, a start is enough. Now, when I look at my life, I see it differently than I did 5 years ago. Then, I saw only loss. My daughter given away, my husband dead, my future uncertain. Now I see healing. I see second chances. I see a daughter returned, a granddaughter born, a foundation built on hope. I see Robert's final gift to me, given in secret because he was afraid, but given nonetheless. Every Sunday, when Morgan and Daniel and Evelyn come for dinner, when Beverly drives down from Charlotte, when Trevor occasionally joins us with his family, I feel it, the wholeness I'd been missing for so long. My house is full of noise and laughter and life. My calendar is full of coffee dates and foundation meetings and family dinners. My heart is full of love I thought I'd lost. Robert didn't leave me with nothing. He left me with everything that matters.